All right, welcome to Welcome everyone. This is Women Who Code Python. This is the Less More How to Code Python in One Line section. We are in the intermediate session number 1, as we mentioned before. My name is Karen. I'm the moderator today. And here along with me, I have the presenter, Poojita. Poojita, off you go.
Thank you, Karen. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. So today I'll be your instructor for this amazing session. A little about me. So I am a research intern at Georgia Tech and IIT Roper. And with Women Who Code Python, I serve as a track lead. So you can chat with me on Twitter anytime. So here's my Twitter handle. Okay, so let's hop on to today's agenda. So we'll begin with a brief introduction about one-line coding and just go over some of its benefits. Then without wasting much time, we'll jump into our live coding session for today. And then we'll have some time for Q&A. Okay, so to anyone who hasn't attended the previous session, I'll just go over what's one-line coding and why is it useful. So one-line coding refers to writing one or minimal lines of code to perform repetitive functions or processes. And Python as a language has immense power to include one-line coding in every code bit we write. The major benefits of one-line coding are that it is easier to read and maintain, and as well as debug. So it's always easier to debug a small code. It also reduces the local memory, complexity, execution time. So in the last session, we discussed about the timeit function, where we evidently saw that how one-line codes have less execution time than the multi-line codes. So it reduces execution time. It also reduces confusion, especially when the script is co-developed with others. So many a times we are developing it with our fellow engineers. So sometimes if there's confusions regarding what is written and stuff. So one-line coding, I see it as more intuitive. Okay, so let's hop into code. And I think Emma will put the Slack link. Sorry, not the Slack link, the Colab link. So let's hop onto our Colab notebook. Yeah, so okay, so here's the Colab notebook link. So please feel free to click the link and follow along. So once you are on the notebook, please let me know with a B in the chat so that I can start. So once you're on the notebook, you must click File and then save a copy in Drive. So that you can practice it on your own. So make sure to do that. So that's clicking File here and saving a copy in Drive. So there will be another notebook, and you should be ready to go working with that as your personal notebook. Okay, so let's start. So once again, we'll begin on the note of Zen of Python. So a Pythoner named Tim Peters once wrote 19 principles on how we can write beautiful and clean code with Python. So it came to be known as Zen of Python, and the guidelines motivate programmers to write simple, readable, and clean code. So being a developer, writing code and making it run is not the only job we have, right? So Python is known for its readability and simplicity. So writing clean and readable code is an art, which is appreciated by other programmers and let them understand every bit of it. So you can find the 19 principles by running this statement, import this, and here you will get all the principles. So the principles which are of most importance here in our session today will be the beautiful is better than ugly. Definitely, when there's less lines of code doing the same job, I mean, the code looks beautiful, right? So, and also the one says readability counts. So definitely it will definitely make our code more readable. So, okay, so let's start with our first example. So so in this session, we'll be looking into very exciting and cool functions. So some are built-in functions of Python and some we'll borrow from different modules. So we'll see that how we can do simple operations using actually just some or other kind of functions, so that, you know, we are not unnecessarily using a lot of for loops, a lot of if-else statements and others. Okay, so let's start. First is printing patterns. So that's a very cool example. Let's see what it does. Let's run it. So this is the multi-line code of printing a triangle of the smiley emoji. Okay, so here we have a pyramid of smiley emojis, right? So this is the multi-line code. We have two for loops and we are printing a couple of print statements. Let's see how we can do that with a join method. So we have a join built-in function of Python, so which is used to join the strings, so kind of concatenate the strings. So let's first try it, what happens. Okay, so the result is very much same. We can see how the number of lines is reduced. Okay, let me go over the code once. That it's okay, n is 5, so we are printing 5 rows. So print is this new line character here, dot join. This is basically concatenating the new line character with our later string. So the join function here, we are having our emoji or any like string. The multiplication operator, I. So this was something which we covered in the last session as well, on how to kind of print I many times a string. So like concatenate a string with itself I many times. So we are using the simple multiplication operator to do that, and it very easily does the work for us. Then we're using a for loop. So we basically are saying that we need to print the smiley I many times, where for I is looping around our range, which is starting from 1, ending at n. So here's n plus 1 because range goes like to n, like the start, the end minus 1. So here we are saying that the I should go from 1 to our n, and where n is 5 for our case. So this is a very simple way of writing this whole code in in just one line, right? Okay, so please feel free to drop in questions and P or B, whether you are like finding it simple or there are any doubts in the chat. Okay, so let's start with the first example question. So let's say that we have to print the inverted triangle. So this was like the triangle, and we need to now print the inverted one. And the inverted triangle pattern of 10 lines with this basketball emoji. Like I just chose because I like basketball. So, okay. So let's try that. Also share in the chat whatever, if there's some guesses about how to go about the code or something. So you can feel free to share that in the chat. So I'll start. So we're using the print statement, very similar to the previous one. We're using the new line character because in the first line, we want some characters, and then we need to hop in onto the next line. Okay, so then we use our join function. Then we'll just copy this emoji from here. Okay, now the code is there that we have to multiply that I many times for I in range. So range means that it will start from that I value and then end at the end value. So now because we need an inverted triangle, that means in the first line, we want 10 balls. So that is n. So we have to start from n And at the last line, we want one ball. So we should go till 0. Okay. Okay, let's try what happens. Oops, it's not printing. Okay, that's quite unusual. It should print something. Oh yeah, that's a really good Runjun. Thank you so much. Saved my day. Yes, when we are going from positive, like a bigger number to the smaller number, we need the step counter to be -1. Thank you, Ranjan, so much. Yeah. So here we are, and I just did this little thing here. Let me just go back. Okay, so here we have the inverted triangle, right? It starts from the first row of 10 balls and at the 10th row with 1 ball. So yeah. Okay, so let's hop on to our next example, that is sum of even numbers in a list. So let's say that we have a list. Here we have list A, and we want to find the sum of all the even numbers in the list. So whatever even numbers are there in the list, we need the sum of. So this is the multi-line code, just one way of writing in a multi-line code to perform this function. So we have a couple of for loop, if and else statements. So let's see how we can write it in one line. And for that, we will use the inbuilt function of sum, right? So sum of numbers or integers in a list is required like everywhere. So Python provides an inbuilt function, that is sum, which sums up the numbers in a particular list. So let's see how we can do that. So we have A as a list. So we need sum. Let's say we are like using S variable to hold our sum. We're using this sum function here. And inside the sum function, so always there should be a list. So we are using list comprehension. So whenever you want to return a list, we use a list comprehension which has the code inside the square brackets. So this will essentially return everything which the code inside it will calculate as a list. So we say that we want all those numbers, so num, for num in A. So this should be in A. If num, this is the reminder operator. So, num, this reminder operator to wherever it's equal to 0. That means it essentially is divisible by 2. So that means it's an even number. Let's run it. Okay, so we have the sum of all the even numbers. That's 2 plus 4 plus 6. So that's 12. Okay. Please let me know if you are going great with the content so far with the B. And if there are any questions, do post in the chat. Also make sure to get the chat as to everyone, set chat as everyone so that everyone can see. Okay. Okay, so let's practice it once. Okay, so let's say that we have an array A and this has these many values, and let's calculate the sum of all those numbers which are divisible by 6. So just to practice our sum function, so let's say we are adding SS where we are calculating sum. So using the sum function here, again, the sum function needs a list. It needs to be given a list. So let's say num for num in our A, if num has the divider function. So the divide 6 now, because we need to be like, it should be divisible by 6. We'll see. And then we'll just print s. Okay. So we're not going to check it, but definitely it would like give us the correct value, which is 186. So all those numbers like 12, 36, 42, all which are divisible by 6, and it will give essentially the sum of those numbers. Okay. So let's go to the next example, that is deleting multiple elements from a list. So these examples are essentially for the list. And let's say if we have to delete some, like we want to delete 2 values, like this is our list, a very smaller one, like A is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we want just our list to have 1, 3, and 5. Like we want to delete 2 and 4, like the even indexes, like we need to delete that, right? And the even positions. So we'll use the del operator to delete. So we'll say that del A1. So the number which is present at index 1 should get deleted. And let's see what happens. Okay. So now what the list we have is 1, 3, 4, 5. And let's say now we want to delete 4 as well, because we need the list to just have 1, 3, and 5. So now our 4 is at the position 2, so we'll just delete that. And now we have our final list as 1, 3, 5. But you know, it required like performing the deletion twice. So let's see how we can delete using slicing. So slicing is also a concept which we discussed earlier. Let me just give an overview of slicing. So slicing is like, it's essentially used with lists. And so it has 3, like what you said, parameters, like it needs a start, it needs an end, and it needs a step counter. So by default, if none of the start or end parameters is present, like in this case, the end is not present, so it will have defaults of start of the list to end of the list. And if by default there is no step present, the third parameter is not present, then by default it will be 1. So we'll use again the del operator, but we'll use it once here. And we'll use slicing to have multiple deletions at the same time. So what we'll say is that we need our first deletion to be at index 1. So we'll start at 1. We need to traverse the whole list, right? So we are traversing the whole list. So we have not mentioned the end parameter because we want it as to be default as the end of the list. And we want that every second element to be deleted. So we want after 2, 4 should be deleted. So every second element. So the step counter is 2 here. So we use the delete operator, A1 colon nothing to denote end, colon 2. Let's see what happens. Okay, so in just one operation, we got the same result which we wanted earlier. So that's cool, right? That's the power of one-line codes. Okay. So next to deleting, let's hop on to creating lists, right? So these are just these are really cool ways to create lists in one line. So I have mentioned, like we have mentioned 2 ways. They are really, both are super useful. So let's say that you want a list of consecutive numbers which can be generated using the range function. So again, here you're using the list comprehension. So that's one way. You use the list comprehension. That means that it will essentially return a list to you. You want the list of I values where I is looping for range 5. So that means that it will essentially, start from 0 and it will go till 5, right? So it will have 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's one way to do it using list comprehension. The other way is to use the list function itself. So if you put anything of, like you want the range of till 5 and you put it in the list function, that will also essentially return the same result. So this is the second way of creating lists in one line using the list function. Okay, so before I go further, just let me know with a B or thumbs up in the chat that everything's going great. And if there's any doubt, I would love to repeat it again. Just let me know in the chat. Great, you guys are awesome. Okay, so next is generating groups. So after lists, let's see how to generate groups. So I think in maths, mathematics, in matrices or something of that sort, we have done like how to map two lists, like elements of two sets or lists, right? So let's say we have one list as A and B, and the other one is 1, 2, and 3. So we want all the mapped combinations. So we want A with tuples of A with 1 also, A with 2, A with 3, and similarly for B. So all of the elements of one list should be mapped to all the elements of other. So this particular example is important because it's using 2 for loops in a single line. So you need to be extra cautious when writing one-line codes because it's very intuitive, that's one thing, but you need to know how to maintain the syntax of the language as well. And you need to, because there's no indentation here to guide you that whether the loop is like written fine or not. So that's one thing you need to be cautious of. And again, we are using list comprehension. So list comprehension is one of the major things in Python one line because it just does our job, makes our job easy as well. And yeah, it just makes it easy. So let's say groups, we want in form of tuple. So we are using that A comma B in form of a tuple. So here we are using first loop, for loop. So for A in this list. So this A is in this list. And again, we're using for B in the other list. And everything is inside square brackets to essentially return a list. So we run it, we have the desired result of a list of tuples, which is the mapping of all the elements of one list with the elements of other. So that's it for generating groups. Okay, let's practice our next example. So in this example, we have some data here, the price data of daily stocks. Our goal is to create a new training data sample for our data. So this data is a list of lists, where each list is containing 6 values. So 6 float values, right? So what we need to do is that we need to create again a list of lists where each of the lists inside it should carry 3 values, and those also should be every second value. So start with this 9.9 and every second value of the list should be there in our list. So many of you might have guessed that yes, we'll be using slicing, the concept of slicing, but I would really encourage you to help me out in writing this piece of code here. So feel free to drop suggestions in the chat and help me out on this. How should I proceed? Okay, so let me start and you guys can follow along. Okay, so we want another data. So let's say new data. Okay, so the new data should be again a list. So I'll be using list comprehension again. So there should be a list. Let's say line, right? So now I want line to have a sliced line basically, right? So, and how should I start with the slicing? That for each line here, I should start with the start and at end, right? So I think I'll use the default values, which is the easiest. But there should be a step counter because I need every other value. So the step would be 2, right? For line in price. So before I run it, I think everyone understood that this would something essentially be like a list of lists where line is corresponding to this inner lists of this list. And let's run it and check. I think I should also print new data. Okay, so here we have a new data. So that's again a list of lists where each list has 3 float values. And those float values are essentially the every other value present in the original data. I think we successfully did our job. Okay. Let's hop on to our next example. That's quite interesting one. So simulating toss of a coin. So, you know, the tossing a coin is I think for me is the fun part of beginning any game with my friends. So let's see how we can code it, like how our code can help us if we don't have a coin at hand. So, and we definitely have a laptop to do that. So for this, we'll be using a random library, and we'll use its choice function. So first, you should always remember that whenever using an additional library, we need to import it and then use its function. So we're importing random here, and then we're using random.choice. And inside this function, we always pass a list of the value with the values which we need to make a choice from. Okay, so this time the random choice is tails. Let's try again. So every time it will give us a random answer, but now it's giving tail twice. So that's fine. This time it's head. So that's the power of random library. Okay, let's practice it as let's simulate a rolling die. So sometimes dice just lose, right? We just misplace the dice. So let's see how we can continue playing Ludo using our code. Let's again import random. Though it was imported once, I'm just for the sake of importing it again, I'm just importing. Let's say random.choice. Here, I need the values as 1 to 6 to make a choice from. Okay. Okay, so this time it's 4. If you repeat it again, that's 4 again, and that's 1. So this is using random.choice. Okay. Okay, so next one is a little mathematical. So we'll be using the math library as well in this. So many of you might have heard of factorial. So if not, just a refresher that factorial is essentially like if it's n, then if I need to calculate n factorial, that's essentially the multiplication of n into n minus 1, into n minus 2, so on till 1. So it's that. So if it's 5 factorial, that means 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. So that's 120. So this is how we calculate factorial. So we have a big bulky code to calculate factorial, you know. So there are so many conditional statements, loops, and others. But many times we don't remember that we have a math library to our rescue. And it contains all of the great like inbuilt functions for performing such complex tasks. So we need not write any bit of code for that. So for that, first of all, again, we need to import math to perform any of its function. Let's say we want a factorial of 6. So we are saying that number is 6, math.factorial. So here factorial is our function. So math.factorial of number, let's see what it is. And that's 720. So again, if you want to calculate of 60, it will give you like this whole big number in the second. So you don't have to write any bit of code there. Okay, so before I move forward, just give a B if everyone is following along well. And if there's any questions, I would love to answer. Repeat something. Okay. Yes, okay. Okay, so now after we have gone through our maths things, let's move on to some databases. So many times we have to work with databases. So let's see a very useful function in databases. That's the zip function. So zip function takes iterables. So it takes iterable 1 or 2 and so on and iterables and aggregates them into a single iterable by aligning the corresponding ith values. So the ith index values, the corresponding values of all the iterables are like aggregated in a single, say, tuple. Okay, so for example, we have two lists here, one of 1, 2, 3, another is 4, 5, 6. If we use the zip function on these two, then we will essentially have, so the ith value, so the 0th value of this list, and this list is 1 and 4. So this 1 and 4 will be aggregated together in one tuple, 2 and 5 in one, and 3 and 6 in the other. So this would be the result of the zip functions of these two iterables. Okay, let's say that I unzip them. So if when I unzip them, it will not return to the previous one, but it will just, take the lists out and give us another set of iterables. So that's again 1, 4, 2, 5, 3, 6. But when I zip them together, then is what we'll get the tuples similar to what we originally had. So because the ith values here are same for these three iterables as 1, 2, and 3. So now these will be grouped together. What if both are not of same size? Yeah, so I think we should definitely check that as well. Let's check that. Let's say A is 1, 2, and B is 1, 2, 3. Oh, great question by the way, Pooja. Let's check. Let's say C is equal to zip function A comma B. Let's print C. So, oh, just a second. I think I need to do this as well. Okay. So, so it's essentially printing the ones that have common ith index and the ones that don't have a common ith index. So A doesn't have like a second index. So the second index of B will also be left out. Let's practice the zip function and see how it would work in daily life, right? In some actual problem. So let's say that imagine that you are in the IT branch of controlling department of your company and you maintain the databases of all employees with the column names as name, salary, and job. So however, your data is out of shape and it's a collection of few rows like this one. So that's Bob, 9900, 99,000 and mid-level manager. So now you want to associate the column names to each of the data entry to bring them in a readable form that, okay, Alice is a name, salary is this, and essentially the job is this. So how can you achieve them? So in such cases, the zip function comes to our rescue, and it's very important to do that, because if we do manually, then these are these 3 rows, then okay, fine, we can do that. But an actual database would have like thousands of rows. So in that case, these functions, knowing about these functions, that they exist and how to use them, comes like very handy. So the one and all of this can be achieved in just one line and one function. So let's say that we are having the other, like the new database is DB. And we are using dictionary as our we're essentially returning each of this members as dictionaries using the zip operator on column names and DB rows. So now, because it's a list of all the values, so we can't just have a DB rows here, because then it will essentially do the indexing on the whole set of values. But we need that Alice should be associated with name and not this whole tuple of Alice, 1800,000 and data scientist. So for that, we are using a for loop, so that this row is basically for row in DB rows. So it will count one row at a time. Let's print it. Let's see what happens. Okay. So here we have a list of dictionaries in which we have key as name and value as the tuples, the individual list of tuples. So let's practice it. Let's practice the function once again. And for that, we have a small example that, let's say we have name, roll number, and marks of some individuals, and we need to just zip them together in single tuples, like the particulars of one person in a single tuple. So let me constitute DB again as our database. Let's say, and put the whole into list. So I'm using the list function here, and then I'm using the zip function. So here I want all the three lists to be zipped together. So I'll put one by one: name, roll number, and marks, and just print DB. Let's run it and see. Okay, so we have the result. Also here, like the marks for the wiki weren't given, right? So marks weren't given. So this essentially had the difference in the indexes. So it just left out wiki from our database, because we need a common index to map things in zip. So this is our result here. Okay, so before hopping on to the next, just let me know again if everything's going great, and with a B in the chat, or any questions. Okay, great. So I think everyone's having fun, right? Because I'm having a lot of fun. So these are just so many different functions for different use cases. So that's really interesting. So yet another type of function. So it's completely different type of function, so that we have knowledge of all the diverse aspects on where we can use Python, because everybody knows that Python actually can be used in most of the scenarios, in databases, in performing mathematical operations and other stuff. Okay, so let's introduce yet another exciting function. That's accumulate. Okay, so first of all, let's see a general how accumulate is written and what it is. So accumulate is a function of a library called iter tools. So this is written as this, used as accumulate. There's some iterable, there's some data, and there's some function. So this function can be, we can make a function of 2 parameters or something like that. And also we can use the existing operators like plus, minus, multiplication, and other stuff as functions. If function is not given, by default, it is addition. So the addition will be performed. If the data is empty, the result will also be an empty, even if the function is there. What essentially accumulate does is makes an iterator that returns accumulated sum. or accumulated results of other binary functions, which is mentioned in the function parameter. So whatever function parameter is there, those binary results in an iterable form. So let's try it once, and then it'll be very easy. So first thing first, let's import accumulate from iter tools. We'll also be using the multiplication operator here. So in form of function. So not basically that you can't just put a mathematical star as a multiplication operator, but it should be in form of function. So the operator library gives all of the necessary mathematical functions. So we'll be picking multiplication for our case. Let's have a data list that's numbers 1 to 10. The iterable here is very essential. The list should be there. Accumulate, we have our data numbers, and we have a function multiplication. Let's see what it is. So this will return, 10 values. It will start from 1 because there's no other index before 1. So it will start with 1. Second would be 2. So so this will be 1 plus basically 1. That's 2. Then again, so 6 would be, so 3 plus 2 plus 1. So that's 6. I'm so sorry. That's multiplication. I'm so sorry. I'm just saying addition. So that's 2 into 1. That's 2. 3 into 2. That's 6. 6 into 4. That's 24. 24 into 5. That's 120. So the accumulated sum or the result, whatever, the accumulated result is then again happens a binary operation which is present in function with the next value in that iterable. So if that's not confusing, you can definitely ask again. I can explain it again if it's confusing. So this will give an iterable form of those binary results, right? And will iterate over the whole list which you have mentioned. So let's test it for our case. Let's see. It will be more easier with max values. So let's say that we have this test case, a test list, and we have to find out the accumulated values of max. So for that we will use list, accumulate our data and our function. So for this case, we have a function of max. Let's, yes, here. So it will check 23 right now, it's the maximum, so 23. Again, it will check the previous maximum, that was 23, with the next value, that's 43. Now what's the maximum? 43, so it will keep 43 as a result. Then it will check the previous maximum, that was 43, with the next item, that's 10. So that's 43 is maximum again, so it will keep 43, so on. So, but at the end, when it encountered 50, that's greater than 43, so it resulted for 50, right? So that's how accumulate works. A very similar to it is reduce. So the reduce function, apply function 2 arguments cumulatively to the items of iterable from left to right. So as to reduce the iterable to a single value. So this actually reduces the whole iterable into a single value. So this presented the whole iterable again, right? But reduces it to a single value. So this is reduce function is a member of the func tools library. So, and it is like used in this form. So func tools.reduce. There's some function name. So essentially the same function names like we used before. Function names, the iterable and the initializer. Now this concept of this additional initializer is that if this is an optional element, if the optional initializer is present, it is placed before the items of the iterable in calculation. So, and serves as the default when the iterable is empty. So if the initializer is not given, and the iterables contain only one element, then the single element would be returned. So let's see this in action. Let's use the reduce function in this case, only the numbers case, multiplication and numbers, and see what result will this give. So this has given essentially the result which has been, accumulated at the end. So this will reduce to the, like after all the iteration, whatever the last result is, reduce will give that. Let's practice it for our test case here, where we are calculating the maximum of our test list. Let's see what reduce will give us here. So reduce, so we are using a max function here and our data is test. So just let me know any guesses what reduce will give us here, like which value will reduce give us. Yes, Tripti, that's right. So this will give us 50 because in the whole iterable, the 50 was the maximum value. That's great. That's 50. So sometimes it's just confusing what reduce and accumulate is used for. So reduce will only return the accumulated value, and accumulate function will return the running accumulate values in form of an iterable. Okay, so let's use our iter tools library again, and let's check out another function of the iter tools, that's combinations. So, in your school, you might have done how to create subsets, like so the combinations of a single iterable which is given to you. So so that's essentially what we are going to do with combinations. So here we are printing a list of combinations of one iterable, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 in our case. And we want the tuples 2 at a time. So we want all possible combinations present in that particular iterable 2 at a time, right? So we want subset of length 2. So here we have. So this combinations will actually give all the possible combinations amongst these values of the iterable with length as 2. Okay, so once this done, let's practice it. Let's practice with a cool example of fruits. Let's say that there are a couple of options present in your house and of fruits, but you only want to eat 2 fruits of them. And now that you are like indecisive of which 2 fruits to eat, let's say that you use the random library again and choose 2 fruits, like let it choose 2 fruits for you, right? So first of all, you want all the possible combinations in which you can eat these given fruits, and then let the random library do the work for you and choose which 2 fruits amongst those you want to eat today, right? And feel free to drop your favorite fruit in the chat. By the way, mine is lychees. So in India, it comes like just for a month or 2, but I love to eat a lot in those months. So, okay, so let's start. The first thing first, we are going to use combinations. So once that this combinations is imported here, so I'll not be importing again. I'll just be putting it in possible combinations. So I'll just say choices. Okay, so my choices is a list of combinations where my data is fruits. And I want 2 at a time. So I want 2 of those. Right. So that's first thing. So let's run it once so that we can see what all possible choices we have. Okay, so these are the choices. So we can eat orange and mango together, orange lychee, all the possible combinations of present of orange, mango, lychee, strawberry, and grapes. But now these are so many combinations, and I just tend to be indecisive in these cases when these are so many combinations. So I tend some other person to choose for me. So let's say now our code will help us here. So we have already imported the random library above, so we'll need not import it again. And we'll like straight away use the random.choice, which we learned earlier. Random.choice, choices. Oops. I think we need to print. Oh. Sorry. Okay, so here we have a choice. We have strawberry and grapes as a choice, so let's stick to it. You know, if we start on deciding, then it will be just cumbersome for us. So you can eat strawberry and grapes at the time. That's a great combination. Okay, after all the juicy fruit talk, let's move on to our very exciting new module. And it's completely different from the ones we have learned till now, which is the re module. So re essentially, you know, stands for regular expressions. So just a brief about what regular expressions are. So they are usually shortened as rechecks. So they are a sequence of characters used to check whether a pattern exists in a given string or not. So if you are ever used like search engines, so search and replace tools or word processors and text editors, so you already have seen regular expressions in use. So need not worry about what complicated these regular expressions are. So they are my biggest enemies too, because like when we need to exactly use regular expressions in databases, then you have to frame the whole expression using its special characters and stuff. So that's tough. But I'm assuring you that using this re library here in Python is just so simple and it's just so easy. So let's start with importing the re library. So let's import re. And okay, so the first, so it has numerous functions, but we'll use one of it, which is find all. So that's essentially how you do Command F or Control F and just find all in your text editors. So that's essentially what you'll do in your code. So let's say you want to know the length or the length, basically the number of times the special string comes in your data. So my data here is that Python is a programming language. Duh, we know that. And Python is Python. Yeah, we know that too. So, but we need to find how many times Python comes in this string, okay? So let's use the re.findAll, and we're essentially finding the length of it. So how many times it comes, let's run it, okay? So Python comes 3 times in this string, okay. Let's practice it. Let's practice this once more. And a very exciting example. So I've just copy pasted the Zen of Python here. And let's see how many times the word better comes in the Zen of Python. And we'll use the re to make, like, rest assured that re is very simple to use. And that's nothing like how we like see regular expressions in general. Okay. So let's say length again, length of re.findAll. We want to find the string better in our this multi-line string of S. Let's see. Oh, oops, I missed one bracket. Okay, so this is 8 times. So 8 times does better come in this whole Zen of Python. Okay, that's cool, right? That's a lot, many times. Okay, Another exciting one with text. So with strings, with text is, example is replacing a text with some other text. So that's again as an exciting example where we are using the same, the string. Python is a programming language, Python is Python, and we're using the replace function. So this replace function is not a function, but it's an inbuilt function. So where we are using this Python, so we are mentioning two things. The one, the string which needs to be replaced, and the other, the string with which it needs to be replaced. So Python should be replaced with Java. So let's run it. Okay, so now our string is converted into Java, is a programming language. Java is Java. Okay, let's practice it. The way we have done, we find the better, how many times better comes. Let's replace better with best, just for fun. So let's say that, so this was the data is in S. So S replace, I want to replace the better string with the best string. Okay. So let's see. Okay, so here's the result. So essentially it's not very much formatted, but it has all the new line characters. So let's say beautiful is best than ugly. Explicit is best than implicit. So all the places where it was better earlier, we have just replaced it with best. So, so that's it. That's it for today's functions. And please feel free to like shoot your doubts in the chat and let me know if anything needs to be repeated again. If something's confusing or needs other round of understanding and going with.
Great. Thank you so much, Poojita, for the amazing session. Definitely enjoyed it. Maybe we can wait a couple of minutes for everyone to type the question in case there's any. So the amazing content that Poojita just showed us, you guys can find it on the Google GitHub repository, which I just posted on the chat. So feel free to access it, and in case you're a little bit sleepy and you want to review it like later on, like the material later on, feel free to visit the GitHub website, GitHub repo, so that you can get it. All right, anyone? Yes, thank you, Poojita. Yes,
yeah, thank you.
Yes. Poojita is amazing. He is amazing instructor. Yes.
Karen, Emma, and Stephanie did a great job. Thank you, Pooja. Would love to see you in all our future events. And there's a lot of amazing content planned for the next sessions. And just like today, we'll be going over some other like functions, which are super important in our Python one-liner content. And thanks for joining.